and welcome to Come Alive with us. Today we have Layton Lassiter, and he's the co-founder of Grey Wolf, which is an agency that's doing things differently and our new ways of working, which we'll expand upon. But I am so excited to have Layton on. We met through a mutual connection, and he's just an amazing friend, partner, human being, and he's got a lot of great insights. So I'm really excited to dig in with him today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jordan.
Of course. So Layton, if you could just give a little bit about your background, what you were doing before, and then tell us a little bit about Grey Wolf, that would be great.
Yeah, totally. So, started out in PR after school, and I started off a small little shop called N6A in Soho in New York City. Was doing tech PR, working a lot with startups and hyper growth companies, a lot of companies that were pre-IPO. From there, it was a great experience. You learned how to get super scrappy in terms of newsjacking and the type of PR that comes with building a brand, rather than what most people expect working with established brands, where they think it's super easy. Working with startups is scrappy. It's the best kind of PR, and it's the best place to cut your teeth. So did that at N6A, and then from there I wanted to work with some of those larger brands, the more blue chip brands, to flex my strategic muscles. So I went to Endeavor's 160/90, which is where I met my co-founder, Shaun Clair, who is a mutual friend of ours, Jordan. And there I was working with blue chip brands, Marriott International, Under Armour, Reebok, the NFL, these really, great brands to work with, early in your career. And I worked across, traditional media relations and PR, strategy work. I did influencer, a little bit of social. So that also was a great, experience to build on the more scrappy type of PR I did at N6A. But from there, I was like, well, I've never worked in house. I've never done internal communications, but everyone keeps talking about it in the trades. So I probably should go and do that. So I left Endeavor to go in house at better.com, which was a fintech that just recently went public, actually. Worked with a great team there. Everyone there was super sharp, super smart. I felt like I was out of my league, amongst that team. Patrick Lenahan, Tanya Gluglihair, Eva Sinilovsky, Kate McGrath. It was a great team, and everyone has since gone on to do other things. But that was a really invaluable experience. It was the first time I ever worked in house and got to sit where my clients currently sit and understand kind of how they view the work and how they work cross functionally. But from there, I worked on the SPAC transaction for Better, and I loved financial communications. I got my hands dirty a little bit with crisis communications and wanted to do more of it because it was something I hadn't done before. Better. So I left and went to a firm called Gladstone Place Partners, which is a strategic communication shops. They're deep in financial services, worked on some of the largest M&A transactions, IPOs when IPOs were a thing, corporate communications, investor relations. So I've done a whole bunch in PR. I haven't just stuck to one category. And I think that, that's definitely set me up really well to go and launch Grey Wolf now with Shaun Clair.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, so often in PR and communications, people silo to one specialty, but it's great to have that wide ranging experience and really opens up so many doors.
Yeah, agreed.
So thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. So let's start off with a lightning round. Could you name a book or resource that has had a profound influence on your approach to leadership?
Yeah, so there's a ton, but I find some takeaways that I lean on the most, especially since founding Grey Wolf, are from Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. He's a retired Navy SEAL commander, and he's written a few big books on leadership from his experience in the Navy, and has a podcast on the topic too. But basically, it's all about how the most effective leaders take responsibility for everything, whether that be in their personal life or as part of a team or business or any other organization. And he says that true leaders take ownership and hold themselves accountable in success, as more importantly as well in failure. And doing so fosters accountability, not only from yourself but also those who surround you, and it creates this better, more transparent communication and teamwork, and ultimately better results, which is super important for folks in client services business like you and I are.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to check that out. I hadn't heard of that
Yeah,
yet.
it's a good one. It's a good one for sure. And he has like I'm not so sure what the podcast is called, but he's got one on leadership as well, and it's got great reviews.
Awesome. Well, kind of building off of that, who is your favorite authentic leader and why?
Well, two people two people come to mind if that's okay. If I can go with two. But of course, I have to give a shout out to my co-founder and my business partner, Shaun Clair. I've I've never met someone who is more of a strategic thinker, and he is someone who has reinforced my understanding for and appreciation of the value of relationships in business and in life. And every day he shows up as his true self. And there's no ego with Shaun. From someone who's been in the industry and doing this work for 20 years, you would expect that, but he's egoless. He just sees our mission to do good work and be an invaluable resource for our clients, and from there we just hop to it like that. There's nothing else in between, and that's the reason why you ask anyone in the industry about Shaun Clair, they'll have nothing but good things to say. Um, in addition to Shaun, the second would be Matt Rosetta. He is the chairman of the investment firm North Six Group, and previously founded and gave me a job at the first PR agency that I ever worked for, N6A, that I mentioned. So I guess you could say that I'm working in this business because of him. But Matt was someone who I immediately identified with when I met him. We're cut from the same cloth and have similar interests. And his style of leadership is one that I actually try to emulate at Grey Wolf based on my experience working for him. He showed up early and stayed late every day, which set the tone and the example for everyone else. Um, he always sought to serve his people in every decision that he made. Um, and he created a culture that was, where people wanted to come to work, and one that rewarded performance. Great ambition, has a knack for turning visions into reality. He acquired a soccer team in Italy, Campobasso. He's bringing one, to Brooklyn as part of the USL in 2025. So he's got great ambition and really has an ability to turn his visions into reality. So he's someone I always admired for how he led, but also how authentic he was in that leadership.
How would you define authenticity in the context of leadership?
Authenticity. I mean, I think it's important that you show up as your true self, right? And I think that's the definition of authenticity. Like, I just think that if you're trying to lead a team and you're not able to be your true self, it's kind of like the blind leading the blind, right? If you don't feel comfortable being your true self and showing up and being the one who sets the example and sets the tone, then I think that you're going to set the wrong example and set the wrong tone if you're not, showing up authentically, and setting the tone is super important. And that's something that's, inherently tied to authenticity in my mind.
Yeah, no, definitely. It starts from the
Yeah.
top and it encourages others to be their authentic
Yeah.
self. So, for sure. And in your opinion, what's like one daily habit that sets leaders up for success?
So it's definitely a unique answer. So it's called scratching, and I came across this term when I sat in on a fireside chat with Sally Sussman, who's the chief corporate affairs officer at Pfizer, and she read about it in a book that's called The Creative Habit: Learn It and Use It for Life by Twyla Tharp. And it's essentially sourcing creativity from various activities throughout your day. And how I scratch, to give you an example, is that every morning with my cup of coffee, I spend the first hour of my day reading something other than the news, right? Being a PR guy, that's all we read is the news. I try to read something that's outside of what I would read as part of my day to day. And depending on what I'm reading, I become inspired in different ways that I then take into my workday. So it could be anything from looking at a problem differently, or it could be a campaign idea, it could be a creative pitch angle, really anything. I just set that time aside to let my mind wander, and then look for ways to incorporate anything that comes, from that time, that creativity that results, into my day to day.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, it's important to get a wide ranging, perspective because that can inspire so many new thoughts and
yeah,
ideas.
and it's really just doing anything that lets your mind wander. It could be going outside for a hike or a walk or a run. It could be journaling or writing, just anything to get away from email or doom scrolling or whatever it is that takes up the 9 to 5 portion of your day when you should be working.
Wait, throughout your diverse career journey, advising Fortune 500 leaders and activating brand partnerships at significant events such as, Super Bowl. What core leadership principles have you found essential in guiding brands to deliver their purpose authentically?
Well, I think commitment is one of those principles that stands out by far. Brands need to commit and hold themselves accountable as part of any purpose platform. And if they're not ready to do so and push forward in rolling out a purpose platform that isn't authentic with their mission, vision, and values, then they open themselves up to both internal and external criticism. So brands need to make sure that they're committed to the purpose, to ensure that they're consistent in their actions, they're consistent in their messaging, they're consistent in their decision making over time, and that'll be beneficial because if and when a brand finds it's facing challenges or pressure externally, they'll be able to have more efficient and effective decision making as a result of that commitment. So when the going gets tough, stay committed to your purpose. It simplifies everything, right? It reduces the chance of a misstep, and internally you'll be much better off for it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I agree. Can you share a pivotal leadership moment or insight that significantly shaped your approach to corporate communications and brand strategy?
Yeah, so one of those realizations, and that actually in part informed the founding of Grey Wolf, is this notion that communications being bucketed as either corporate or consumer is no longer relevant, right? Consumer PR pros have to take the lead and have taken the lead, especially over the last 5, 6, 7 years, where they found themselves navigating stormy waters over societal happenings. Could be political issues, could be social issues, but large issues that are largely outside of their control. And typically this would be something that fell to corporate and crisis communicators. Meanwhile, that's the consumer PR side. Meanwhile, corporate communicators are finding themselves having to explain to their employees, their investors, partners, other stakeholders, how a certain consumer boycott or influencer partnership is impacting their bottom line, or why an activist investors in their stock over a new product launch, right? The insight that consumer PR pros need to have business acumen and corporate savvy to be effective advisors and leaders, while corporate communicators need to understand what moves and inspires their brand's consumers. PR issues aren't so black and white anymore, we say at Grey Wolf. They come in all shades of gray. And as advisors, we need to know how to operate in that gray area to be effective in today's media landscape, but also to be able to lead our teams, both whether it's in-house or agency side.
Yeah, definitely. That gray area is a real thing for sure. Still, how do you craft communication strategies as a leader, ensuring that they resonate with each organization's unique needs and challenges while remaining true to, the brand's purpose?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to having a thorough understanding of your clients or your business's objectives, and making clear the brand's purpose. I mean, to your point, each organization has its own unique challenges. So understanding, how and why they want to grow their business in that certain way will inform how we as advisors can leverage PR to better position their business to achieve those objectives. So overarching that entire strategy is the brand's purpose. You always lead with purpose. So it's a communication strategy that's led with purpose, and then it's rooted in achieving specific business outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be unique to each client and individual. And yeah, for sure. As a leader, how do you foster an environment where diverse viewpoints are embraced to manage brand reputation and drive engagement effectively?
I'll say this: it's human nature to defend yourself against criticism or feedback. As much as no one wants to admit it, unsolicited criticism doesn't feel good. I don't care what anyone says; it's true. Unsolicited criticism doesn't feel good. But I think, especially in public relations and marketing, we have a workaround for this, right? We're really unique in that way, where we're in the influence business, right? So it's easier for us to ask ourselves, how can we be the most effective at our job if we're not hearing every vantage point of how this campaign will be viewed, or what if there are blind spots where we're leaving ourselves vulnerable, or how do you think of this little bit of messaging will land externally as well as internally? So in PR and marketing specifically, we need people to speak up to make sure that we're delivering for our clients. So I think we're really unique in that way. And The only way that we can do this is by creating what people, have previously called a circle of safety, where we create a space where we as leaders communicate upfront that this space is for us to take whatever we're working on and make it as perfect as possible, and share the expectation that everyone is to weigh in, because we're all owners of this bit of this project. We're all owners. We're all accountable. So that means we win together and we lose together. No one's in danger of being viewed any differently if they voice their opinion, right? We need your opinions. When you communicate that to your people, up front, and you instill that kind of ownership in the work and in the business, I guarantee you'll have to put limits on contributions rather than, pull teeth getting people to speak up.
That's so true. And I think so often, people are afraid to speak up, but it's so important for all the reasons that you listed, and, to really move forward appropriately. You need that
Yeah,
feedback.
I agree.
Yeah. So, how do you cultivate a culture of authenticity and enable leaders to forge deeper connections with their audience?
So I really do think that the art of listening is something that's so often overlooked these days. I view it that, as how you forge deeper connections with your audience is how you forge deeper connections with any audience, right? Be it one person or millions. When you're an active listener and you illustrate that you've heard their feedback, you've heard their concerns, their wants, their needs, whatever your audience is communicating to you, if you illustrate that you've heard that, then you can then tailor your message to directly address what's on their mind, right? And when you do that, you're able to build a deeper connection beyond what could be seen as a superficial or a transactional relationship to one that is built on two-way communication and trust.
Absolutely. Active listening is so pivotal, and definitely something that I think, you touched on saying it's underrated, or something along the lines of that. But yeah, I mean, we need more of that,
Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah. So, as a leader, how do you ensure a brand's message remains authentic and resonates with its target audience amidst the complexities of media engagement, with media relations? How do you go about that?
It's consistency all day. CID, consistency all day. It's really the guiding light with PR, but also marketing more broadly. You need to be consistent in your messaging. You need to be consistent in your actions. You need to be consistent in your decision making across all channels to make sure what you are saying, what your message is resonating with your target audience, and that consistency, what people, what consumers, come to expect from your brand. It'll completely circumvent the complexities of media engagement. So, but that, it's easier said than done. A little easier agency side, but when you're in house, working cross functionally with your marketing counterparts, your legal counterparts, your partnership counterparts, to ensure that consistency is just that consistent across the board. It's difficult. It's a tall task, but it's why we all have jobs. But if you can be consistent in your channels and how your brand shows up to create that expectation for consumers in their interactions with your brand, you'll resonate 12 times out of 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Consistency is key for sure. So, what emerging trends do you foresee in brand communications? As a leader, how do you recommend brands proactively adapt to stay aligned with their purpose in this evolving landscape?
Yeah, so it was a little. It's similar to what I was saying earlier, that at Great Wolf, we're seeing that PR counselors will need to have corporate communications and consumer PR chops under one roof, right? And if you're a consultant, you need to have business acumen and an understanding of what moves and inspires your consumers. Like the days of segmenting the industry as consumer corporate, they're over. So that's one. And then in terms of recommendations for how brands can proactively adapt and stay aligned to their purpose is, again, it's that commitment, right? You have to stay committed to your purpose. Don't ever waver. We look at what happened with Target, with Bud Light, and all these other brands who kind of like took a step back from their purpose. It was like pouring gasoline on the fire, right? So if you've committed to a purpose, stick to it. Don't backpedal in the face of scrutiny or pressure, right? Trust yourself, trust your people that you've done the hard work up front and that you got it right. You can't make everyone happy, right? You cannot make everyone happy. And that's okay, right? That's okay. Stick to your guns, or like I said, you risk pouring gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's so valuable. Reflecting on your transition to entrepreneurship, what leadership lessons have you learned along the way, and what advice would you offer to individuals considering a similar journey?
I'd say the biggest lesson is that it's okay if you don't know everything, right? People get themselves down that they don't know the answer to everything immediately when something's asked. And I'd argue that that's actually the position that most, if not all, entrepreneurs find themselves in when they strike out on their own at first. And, you know, certainly at times down the road when they're facing an uphill battle. But I'd say don't be afraid to ask what you are telling yourself is a dumb question. Like if you're thinking it, odds are there's someone else in the room who is thinking exactly what you are. So raise your hand and ask it. Ask your client, ask your partners, because that's how you're going to be able to be most effective and pay your bills at the end of the day. So it's great not knowing
Yeah.
everything, and don't beat yourself up too much about it. That's definitely the biggest thing that I've learned since launching Grey Wolf, and something I constantly have to remind myself day in and day out.
I love that. And then one last question for you is, what do you want your legacy to look
Well, uh, my legacy, I'd say that I want my legacy to be that I've made an impact on people's lives. I want people, to be better off having known me, whether that's like better themselves personally, professionally. I just want to make an impact on people's lives. And how we're doing that at Grey Wolf is by working with great people, partnering with great people like yourself, Jordan, and, building relationships for the long term. Because if another lesson, that I'm learning from entrepreneurship is that, nothing matters more than relationships. It's the people that make up a business. It's the people that make up an economy, right? So, just being able to impact people's lives, make them laugh, do good work with them is really what I'm all about day to day. And I think if that's my legacy, then I'll consider this a tremendous success.
I love that. Yes, people centric, at the core of everything. That's so
Yeah,
crucial.
all we have is
So
each other in this thing we call life. So
exactly. Well, Layton, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights. You've been through so many different positions and have been so successful. It's just really interesting to hear your perspective and really appreciate your
yeah, of
time.
course, Jordan. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, and I love what you're doing with the podcast. Loving all the content on LinkedIn. So you also keep up the great work. I really enjoy watching this platform grow. So it's been a real honor to have been a guest. So appreciate you having me.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. Well, I hope you have a great day and we'll be in touch
All right,
soon.
Jordan. Talk soon.
Bye.